Hey there, I am Barb Higgins, and this is 1,000 Tiny Steps. In this podcast, I share my stories of love, loss, triumph, and tragedy as I continue to retrace my steps and ponder what led to the death of my daughter Molly. By doing so, I hope to not only help myself, but to bring purpose and possibility to those who listen. If you are ready to laugh, cry, shake your head in disbelief, then tie, buckle, face up, or slip on your shoes, and join me as we begin our 1,000 Tiny Steps. Hey everybody, Barb Higgins here, welcoming you to episode 155 of 1,000 Tiny Steps, and episode 7 in season 9. I'm going to make a comment that there's a lot of background noise. It's about 100 degrees and muggy, so I have my screen windows open, and it rained, so every time a car goes by my house, it makes a loud noise. So if it's distracting, I apologize. Try to just visualize me recording a podcast in the middle of a rainstorm rather than a beautiful sunny day that I wish I was outside ignoring. So last week's episode was sort of a break from just going week to week, step to step. And part of it was for my own well-being. There's a lot to think about in processing these steps. And I've explained before that I read the chapter and answer the questions and do some of the breathing work over a period of 2 or 3 days so that I can record a podcast episode about it. But the episode doesn't air for a couple of weeks. So what I do is I work on the step that matches what's being aired. So I'm sort of going through each step twice and sometimes 3 times, believe it or not. And you can imagine this has been an exhausting process for me. What I love about the universe is it gives me what I need. I will say the time frame, the last week of July, first week of August, when all of these episodes, a lot of the episodes that you'll be hearing, in mid-August, late August, September are being recorded, has been really hard for me. I've had some frustration. Kenny was sick and in the hospital. I was sick. I feel like I get behind. I'm oftentimes really unhappy when I'm home. I'm happiest when I'm not home. And, these things in this whole 12-week session of self-reflection and healing and trying to live a life of recovery, I'm obviously spending a lot of time thinking about these things. And a couple of external things play a part. My mom had a bit of a meltdown and needed a lot of help organizing paperwork and financial support applications and all that sort of thing. And it's overwhelming when you've never had to do this sort of thing and you're losing your vision and you can't drive anymore and your husband's in a nursing home and, what do you do now? So I have to say, though, my reaction to all of these things has been incredibly different than from the Barb even 6 months ago. The sort of former version of me would be all up in arms and pissed off and anxious and stressed out and storming all around. And I realized that all that does is make me miserable and the people around me. So I feel like I have been much more successful at just staying in the moment, finding things about the moment to be grateful for, and understanding that, 5 years from now, I might look back on these days and really miss them and wish that it was today again, So step 7, the chapter of the book, Breathing Underwater, is called, Why Do I Have to Ask? And, there's something self-effacing and potentially demoralizing and perhaps humiliating about getting on your knees and asking for something, right? The act of getting on your knees is to humble yourself. Lots and lots of religious traditions around prayer have you kneel or prostrate yourself, which is to kneel down on the ground and then sit on your feet and put your forehead to the ground. A lot of Middle Eastern religions, Far Eastern religions, that's the posture for prayer. So what you're doing is you're humbling yourself before God and then asking for whatever it is you're asking for. It's an interesting concept. And step 7 says, humbly asked God to remove our shortcomings. It's a short little sentence there, isn't it? Humbly asked God to remove our shortcomings. Of course, there's nothing simple about any of these steps. Although I always find I feel better at the end of the chapter and the end of the work. So many religions will say that God is all-knowing. And we are admonished as children that God knows everything you do or say or think. So when you're asking for forgiveness, you would think, okay, God, just forgive me would be enough. And it is, in a general sense. But sometimes we have to really be mindful about what we are or are not asking God to do. And then think about not only what we're asking, but why, and what we hope to get from having that particular prayer answered. Step 7, as always, brought up a lot of stuff for me. Basically, the author here, Richard Rohr, wants to make 2 points in this chapter.
Why is it good to ask? We're asking God to remove our shortcomings. And then the second question he wants to answer in this is, what is really happening in prayers of intercession? So a prayer of intercession is a specific prayer for a specific thing. Please, God, let me win this race. Well, you pray to win a race. That means God's answering your prayer. And everyone else in the race that might be praying to God to win isn't having their prayer answered. Would God really waste his time choosing who's going to win the race based on who asked? Probably not. Or even the universal energy. If you're not religious and you don't pray to God, if you meditate or manifest, you manifest victory. If the universe, rewards your manifest, it's not rewarding someone else's, right? So what does that mean? Does that mean we redefine victory? That maybe there's a victory in a second place finish? Who knows, right? These are all things that come to my mind when I think of these two questions. So why is it good to ask? Well, Richard jumps right into analyzing our mindset when we are praying, when we're living our lives, when we're compiling our list of shortcomings. We make the list based on our own self-observation. So we might have things on our list that aren't shortcomings at all, but we feel that they are. We might have actions that we feel are terrible transgressions that other people might not think so at all. Likewise, we might have left things off that God is horrified with, or the universe, or somebody else might be. So this act of humbly asking God to do anything removes your desires and wants from the request. It's interesting. So let me find the book and read you some little snippets. All right. Why do we need to ask? So, we've asked and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and the door will be opened. Oh, well, that makes sense. If you want the door to open, knock on it. Somebody will answer it and open it for you, right? If you want to find something, go looking for it. If you have a question, ask and it will be answered. Here's the thing. You don't always find what you're looking for. You might find something. It might actually be what you should be looking for, or maybe what you really are looking for, but you haven't gotten there yet. The answer you get might not be the one you want, but it might be the one you need. All of these variables come into universal requests. So in this chapter, Richard will address the one simple, often confused, but important mystery of asking. Why is it good to ask? And what is really happening in prayers of petition or intercession? Are we supposed to be talking God into things? Come on, God, do it my way. A lot of people feel that way. I've always thought of prayer as a conversation with God. I remember having a wonderful conversation with Peter Farrell, who was the track coach at Princeton for years. And I went to his running camp, the Princeton cross country camp, every summer. It was a blast. I miss it profoundly. And I remember we used to have all sorts of intense conversations about a million different things. Peter could talk about everything, super smart man. And one time we got talking about just religion and God. And he was raised very, very, boomer generation, Catholic. I was raised Gen X Episcopalian, right? So a little bit different. But we both agreed that prayer was really just a conversation with God, that you sit down, you pour a cup of tea, and you converse. The trick is listening and hearing what God has to say. He doesn't say it with words across a table from you. Sometimes you don't realize he's answered you until weeks or months or years after you've asked the question. So therein lies the rub, yes? How do we meditate on something? How do we manifest something and know that we've been received and responded to? And why do we have to ask? Richard said, prayer is a symbiotic relationship with life and God, a synergy which creates a result larger than the exchange itself. And this is why in religious writings, the prophets say that prayers are answered, even though it doesn't seem to us like they are. Sometimes the question we ask or the request we make is answered in a much bigger way. It sets in motion something that's much, much bigger than, please let my mom not die from cancer. So your mom dies from cancer anyway, but maybe that question set in motion a series of things that caused something else to happen that was more important than that. And I know I'm not explaining it super well. Prayer is not a way to try to control God or even to get what we want. We might think it is. We might wish it was. I know as a little girl, when I pleaded with God to stop the abuse, I didn't understand why he didn't just make it stop. Like, couldn't he have made my father stop doing it? And the truth of the matter is no. No, we have free will down here, down here, in here, on here, planet Earth, physical world. People can do what they want, and some people do horrible things. Richard also says that, according to Christian doctrine, what you get from prayer is a power, an internal power, an open vessel through which to feel the love of the universe or the love of God. That's what prayer does. Whether or not it gives you blue socks and a green hat for Easter, It answers your prayers in a way that promotes power and love, which I think is interesting. So then he talks about what causes the death of a relationship, whether it's our relationship with God, whether it's our relationship with ourselves, whether it's, our relationship with sanity and we become alcoholics, who knows, whatever. A big piece of the death of any relationship is entitlement, this feeling that I deserve something from you, this feeling that you owe me this or that I've done such and such, and you haven't lived up to my expectations, so thus you don't deserve my friendship or whatever. I've experienced that a lot recently, and it's hard to take. And with entitlement comes a sense of, I'm better than you. My station in life is higher. I have more money than you. I have a bigger house than you. I have bigger boobs than you. I'm prettier than you. I'm faster than you. I'm stronger than you. None of these things ultimately matter. In the big picture of life, none of these things matter. What matters is what the love in your heart, ultimately. So there's a great sentence here. He says, Richard pulls from the Gospels in the Bible, a quote that goes like this: "It is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the reign of God." It is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich person to enter the reign of God. Now, this doesn't mean heaven. I think it totally got misconstrued to mean heaven and was a great thing to hang over people. And it doesn't mean you can't have a lot of money, right? People have a lot of money and give a ton of money away. If you can use your money to make things better, then get a lot of money and use it to do good things. But it's just saying that if you're rich, oftentimes rich people, maybe they're not just rich financially, but they're rich in self-love and such, have this sense of entitlement. And that if you're entitled, you're never going to be an open vessel for the love of the universe or the flow of universal energy, right? You're not going to be an open vessel for the Holy Spirit if you're a religious person, because your entitlement shuts it off. Your entitlement means that your energy, your spirit is more important than the energy of the universe or the Holy Spirit, right? Trust me, I'm getting to why we have to ask for God to remove our shortcomings. I'm getting there. The mind of a rich person is invariably one of entitlement. I deserve this because I worked really hard for it. This is also a manipulative tool in relationships. And I've been in relationships where this has happened. I work all day and then I cook dinner. I deserve for you to wait on me hand and foot. Eric felt very entitled in my first marriage and had a lot of resentment around me not cooking. I said, I don't cook. We can go out to eat every night. I don't cook. He felt that because he commuted and worked all day and drove home, that I should cook dinner. And he thought I should quit coaching so that I could have dinner ready for him. That didn't sit well with me. How about you get a job in town so you don't have to drive 2 hours and you cook dinner? We went round and round like this. And that's what the sense of entitlement is. He was imposing his entitlement on me and I was returning mine to him. And that relationship didn't last. To undo and undercut this arrogant and soul-destructive attitude, Jesus told us all to stay in the position of a beggar, of a petitioner, of a radical dependent. When you think of kneeling and bowing your head or prostrating yourself on the ground to pray, you're laying yourself down before the Lord. You are lowering yourself down into a complete state of humility and selflessness. I am nothing before you. Hear my prayer, okay? It doesn't mean I suck. It doesn't mean I'm terrible. It just means that you're letting go of all your ego-driven entitlements. You're putting them aside. You're laying yourself bare, peeling off your skin. To know that we don't know, to know that we are always in need, to know that we are nomads and strangers on this earth, keeps us situated in a place of structural truth. Knowing our place, knowing how we fit into the greater puzzle, seeing the forest for the trees, having perspective, stepping back and looking at it all. One of the first mediums I went to after Molly died told me that the very first thing she said to her was, tell my mom I understand it now. I get it. Tell my mom I get it now. I'm not mad. I understand. Lots and lots of other people that have lost people that have gone to mediums have shared that this is the very first thing they hear from their loved ones as well. Prostrating yourself, letting go of everything you think you know, to be open to an answer that you may not think you deserve or might not understand, is the nature of true prayer, according to Richard here and step 7. When I think of beggars, I think of people sitting in intersections with signs, needing money. And it's easy to look down on those people. It's easy to not like them and have disdain and judgment. But I always imagine how humiliating it must be for them to lay themselves bare and ask for money. It's tricky. I have people ask me for money a lot, and I think it's because they know I settled a big lawsuit. If I gave everybody money, I would have no money left. Well, I will likely never go hungry in my life. And sometimes the people who ask me I can't give money to everyone who asks, but they have the wherewithal to reach out and ask anyway. And that's never lost on me. The longer I live, the more I believe that truth is not an abstraction or an idea that can be put into formulas or mere words. Our real truth has to do with how we situate ourselves in this world. Joseph Piper, who's a German philosopher, a German Catholic philosopher, says the natural habitat of truth is found in interpersonal communication. Whereas we have made truth an idea on paper, there are ways of living and relating that are honest, sustainable, and fair. And there are utterly dishonest ways of living and relating to life. This is our real de facto and operative truth, no matter whose theories or theologies we believe. Catholic, Episcopal, Baha'i, atheist, agnostic, matters not. Take what you believe and live it authentically, right? A lot of the stuff going on in the Olympics, that went on in the Olympics with the boxers and the dubious questions around their physical realities. These two women who suffer from some chromosomal abnormalities that does not stop them from being women. Some very, very touty Christians just saying horrible things about these women. To me, that's not living a Christian life. Jesus didn't spout that stuff off. That's entitlement. That's somebody saying, I have a platform here, and I'm going to use my voice to spew hatred, not to spew love and seek answers, but to point fingers and spew hatred. That's their truth. They can go to church every Sunday. They can say their prayers. They can count their rosaries. They can go to confession. They can do it all. But their truth is how they live their life. So I use that as an example because as I record this, it's on the news and in social media all the time. It's ugly. Our life situation and our style of relating to others is the truth that we actually take with us to the grave. So that sort of summarizes what I just said. How we do life is our real and final truth, not what ideas we believe. So we humbly ask God to take away our shortcomings. We're admonished not to pray for specific things. Prayers for intercession seldom work the way we want them to work. I prayed and prayed and prayed to not be abused anymore. It wasn't until I got brave enough to tell that the abuse stopped. So maybe my prayer was finally answered when I was brave enough to do what I needed to do. Maybe that was how my prayer was answered, by the people I told believing me and removing my abuser, even if only temporarily, and setting up a safe life for me, right? So my prayers were answered, not at all how I thought they would be answered. I wanted my dad to be magically fixed so that I could just have a normal life. By not asking for specific things, we're really giving it all over to God. We're acting like beggars. We're laying ourselves down. When we ask God to humbly remove our shortcomings, we can't give him a list of what we think he should remove. We've made a list of what we think our shortcomings are. We already did that. We shared that list with somebody. We felt terrible about it, but we made the list. So we put on the list what we thought was important. We do not now hand that list to God and say, remove all these. Because God might look at that list and say, no, I'm not removing those. No, they're fine. That's not what needs removing. I'm going to remove what I think needs to be removed, or the universe, or the way that your manifestations are responded to. I'm trying to keep this open. This is a Christian book, so it's easy for me to go down the religion road, and I believe in God, so that comes up for me. But this is all applicable in theory, even if you do not believe in God, because we all believe in something. And the piece of AA that is sometimes the most difficult for true atheists that just believe only in the physical reality is acknowledging some sort of higher entity. Sometimes it's just the wind. You can't see it, but you can feel it. You can see what it does to other things. You know it's there. So let the wind be your higher power. You know, whatever it takes to have something to buy yourself down in front of. Oftentimes it's nature, a sunrise, a sunset, a storm. Here's what Richard has to say about the manner in which we ask God to humbly remove our shortcomings. We can never engineer or guide our own transformation or conversation. If we try, it will be a self-centered and well-controlled version of conversion. With most of our preferences and addictions, still fully in place, but now well disguised. Any attempts at self-conversion like this would be like an active alcoholic trying to determine their own rules for sobriety. We don't get to control this. It's often why early on alcoholics, they give up alcohol, but then they get addicted to cigarettes or caffeine or pot, gummies and things like this. They just change their addiction. Oftentimes it takes several years of alcohol-free living to finally realize, okay, all I did was replace alcohol with being an asshole or with exercise or with eating junk food or, whatever it is that you replaced alcohol with. Don't dare go after your faults yourself, or you will go after the wrong thing. Or more commonly, a clever substitute for the real thing. If you try to pull out your own weeds, you might pull out the wheat along with them. And this goes back to what I was saying about us choosing what we think is important, when maybe that's not what God sees as important at all. Oftentimes as well, when we try to take control of this, we just get angry. We think, all right, I asked God to take away my desire for alcohol and nothing else in my life is right. I'm just pissed off. Well, it's because the desire for alcohol will go away when what causes the desire is taken away. And sometimes we don't know what that is. God knows, or the universe knows. The energy of manifestation knows. So it's something that we have to really let go of. Prayers of intercession are very much pass the test, earn an A. Do a good deed, get a prize. Or with Jack, pee on the potty, get a piece of candy, right? It's all action and reward, action and reward. And that's not what step 7 is about. Asking God to humbly remove your shortcomings is about laying yourself prostrate before whatever energy you believe in and saying, fix me as you see I need to be fixed. And then you get up and live your life trying to make good decisions and eat well and not drink or not do whatever it is you're working on here. I have a hard time. I've had a hard time with this step. I don't even know. I was just about to say, I don't know what to tell God to fix. I'm not supposed to. See, I struggle here, don't I? All spiritual rewards are inherent, not rewards that are given later. Back to Catholic confession. Go to confession, say your Hail Marys, and then when you die, you'll get into heaven. No. Not heaven later, so much as health now, which will prepare you for heaven later, right? So we don't do things so that we get into heaven. We do things to be well and happy and loved and solid in our own skin, which gets us ready for whatever happens to us when we leave the physical realm. Richard goes on to talk a little bit about addiction and how it uses up your spiritual selves. It shuts you off from reaching out. And I didn't notice this with my alcoholic drinking so much as I did with the hardcore drug use after Molly died with Doug. I was so separate from anything that made me feel anything. And it was a survival mechanism at the time. It was astounding and eye-opening to me. I know that a lot of the Baha'i writings don't say, oh, alcohol is a sin. It simply says alcohol separates you from your soul. It removes you from the part of you that maybe makes good decisions or practices love. It removes you from the you that is the essence of everything good, right? And it masquerades it, it hides it, it deadens it, it silences it. And this is what we want to sort of get rid of. We want to maintain that connection. And by giving our shortcomings over, simply saying, I give myself to you, universe, do with me as you will, right? That little one-line prayer that I've been saying every morning. In that process, we'll be better apt and available and ready to go on to step 8 and 9, which is all about being ready and willing to make amends and then actually making amends to people. It's intense stuff. Amazing, but intense. Richard acknowledges here and observes, rather, that in his experience, many people in recovery are uniquely and acutely spiritual. And maybe that's why that tender side of them gets so easily sucked into this addiction. And he feels that intense spirituality got frustrated early and sort of knocked off kilter, got, then lost in the throes of addiction. He says it's important that we ask, seek, and knock. Ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and the door shall be opened. To keep ourselves in right relationship with life, not with God, not with the universe, not with a higher power, just in a right relationship with life. We wake up on steady footing. Life is a gift, totally given to us without cost. Every day of it, every part of it. That made me put the book down when I first read it. Life is a gift, all of it. The good, the bad, the ugly, every minute of it is given to us for nothing. We have it. I'm sitting here right now with a lot of background noise that distracts me a little bit, giving a podcast because I was given life. Lucky me, right? Life is a gift. A daily and chosen attitude of gratitude will keep our hands open to expect that life, allow that life, and receive that life at ever deeper levels of satisfaction, but never to think we deserve it. I'm going to read that whole thing again. So it is important that we ask, seek, and knock to keep ourselves in right relationship with life itself. Life is a gift, totally given to us without cost, every day of it and every part of it. A daily and chosen attitude of gratitude will keep our hands open to expect that life, allow that life, and receive that life at ever deeper levels of satisfaction, but never to think we deserve it. So oftentimes, if you went to AA meetings, lots and lots of speaker meetings, when the alcoholics stand up and introduce themselves, the first thing they'll say is, every morning I get out of bed and I get on my knees and thank God for another day. And I live with an attitude of gratitude. And you find gratitude in everything. It's easy to be grateful when you win the lottery. It's not easy to be grateful when you're sitting in an intersection begging for money. But in this 12-step method of thinking, you would find ways to be grateful for your ability to sit in an intersection and beg for money. In my experience, he says, if we are not radically grateful every day, resentment always takes over. So we're supposed to radically accept that we are radically acceptable, right? That we are lovable just because we're here. We're supposed to look at life as a gift and be radically grateful for it all the time. And that if we are not radically grateful, resentment will consume us. Years of practicing step 7, really giving it over, practicing living in a complete attitude of gratitude, really laying yourself out before the universe, humbly asking for whatever shortcomings the universe sees that they fix, sinks in after a while. And this life realization comes to people several years into sobriety when they realize, looking back, that they had what it took all along. It was the alcohol that took it away. And most recovering alcoholics in the early stages are so consumed with the desires of addiction, they don't see anything in themselves of value, which is another reason it's good to not make your own list of what you want God to fix, because you're just going to hate yourself. Fix my ugly face. Well, maybe you think your face is ugly and other people don't, right? It's just one of those incredible, self-effacing journeys. It reminds me of Dorothy and the Ruby Slippers. She had the power to go home all along. She had to walk all those steps and meet all those characters to realize she had the power to go home all along, right? A good metaphor right there. So Thomas Merton puts it this way. Well, first, Richard says, God is willing to wait for that, for you to figure out what you really want, or to be shown what you really want. Like Jacob at the foot of the ladder in his dream, where angels walk between heaven and earth, you will lay your head on even a stone pillow and say, you were here all the time, and I never knew it. This is nothing less than the house of God. This is the very gate of heaven. Right here in your life. This is a quote from the book of Genesis. And basically what it's saying is it's all right here. The Baha'i faith believes that heaven isn't someplace else. The physical realm exists within the spiritual realm. So Molly could be sitting right here next to me. That human, like I'm looking at this table and this microphone and this computer, and they don't know I'm here because they're inanimate objects. And we are inanimate objects in the spiritual world. We're right in the thick of it, and we just don't have the ability to know it. An addict in the early stages of recovery doesn't see that the beauty is right here, that the answers are right here, that they're wearing the ruby slippers. They have been since they woke up on day 1 of their sobriety and decided to not drink anymore. They were wearing the slippers then. Then Thomas Merton adds to it and says, it's even better than that. This gate of heaven is everywhere. It's everywhere you go. The ability to have that radical acceptance and feel radical gratitude and know that you're lovable just because you're here is everywhere. And I know this sounds hokey. It sounds so utterly hokey, but when you really sit back and think about it, having these attitudes in your head rather than anger and fear and frustration and depression, so much better to feel this way than it would be to feel those ways. Why do we need to ask for God to remove our shortcomings? It shows God or the universe that we get it, that we're finally at a place where we can ask, we can let them go. I hold on to everything. I just clench tight. It takes me a long time to let go of things because I just feel all the time that I can fix it. I can fix it. I can fix it. Let me fix it. Let me fix it. My whole life is fixing it. So the questions are great on this chapter. Prayer is not a way to control God or even to get what we want. This is coming up to question 1. The answer for every prayer is one and the same. The Holy Spirit, just receiving the love, feeling the wind on your face on a still muggy hot day, or feeling the warm draft of the oven door as it opens as you walk by on a cold winter day, right? You feel it. So the question is, what has been your understanding of prayer in the past? How does this quote impact your understanding? And the quote is, prayer is not a way to try and control God or even get what we want. So I wrote, I have always considered prayer to be conversation with God. As a child, my prayers felt unanswered, but they never stopped me. That never stopped me from praying. I've never prayed to win a race because God wouldn't choose me over someone else. I tend to pray for the attributes with which I can handle my challenges. On the starting line, I would pray to handle whatever happened. If I win, let me handle that with humility and grace. If I lose, let me handle that with humility and grace. My biggest challenge is setting aside time to simply pray. I fit it in between other tasks. It's not a ritual, it's a routine. I do find that when I pray, my life feels better, regardless of the circumstances I'm in. It's like you have a couple drinks, you wake up feeling like crap. So it's just don't have the drinks, except then you want the drinks. Yeah, same thing with prayer. You feel better if you pray, but I don't feel like praying. Okay, the next question is, it follows the death of any relationship is entitlement, feeling that somebody owes you something. I act this way and you didn't respond the way that I feel you should. Therefore, you owe me something. That's not okay for anyone to do. So Father Richard writes, we are all forever beggars before God and the universe. Do you find it difficult to ask for help? Yes, I do. What are some areas in your life where you have a sense of entitlement? What would happen if you reverse that attitude? So I had no trouble answering this. My entitlement stems right here. I feel like I do all the laundry, I pay all the bills, I make all the appointments, I clean 80% of the house, I do all of it. And I don't often feel recognized. I don't feel like the other people in my household pull their weight. And then when I'm step in and help them with what is supposed to be their responsibilities, they're all like, well, gee, it's about time you help me. And I get angry and I feel very entitled. So what I've done these past 3 weeks, and I think it's why I alluded to it at the beginning of this episode, and I think it's why I'm feeling okay about things, is I've just tried to be like, in 30 years from now, when I can't get out of a wheelchair, I'll wish I could wash the dishes. I'll wish I could drive my mom around. I'll wish she was still here. I'll wish that I wasn't at the end of my life. I have to remind myself that what I'm hating now is what I'll desire 20 years down the road. And that feeling actually came to me from a meme on social media about don't look in the mirror and hate yourself because you're looking at a version of yourself that 30 years from now you wish you still looked like. And it's so true. Entitlement. I'm actively working to let that go in my relationship and interactions with my mom and Kenny and Gracie and Jingle Jangle. I find it increasingly incredibly difficult to ask for help. I feel sometimes like a full of myself martyr. Fine, I'll do it myself. And then feeling resentful. I just spoke to that. I think I have a sense of entitlement in my home life, that I deserve my work time. I do way more than you, blah, blah, blah. Reversing this thought process at home is a must. I'll give it a go, and I have been giving it a go. In society, beggars are often looked down upon, so visualizing ourselves as beggars, I think, for me, can be difficult. I am willing to ask for help, but I tend to want it my way, like me giving God a list of things I want him to fix. Oh, Barbara, you're so darn full of yourself. All right, next question. This is about prayers for petition. Our life situation and our style of relating to others is the truth that we actually take with us to the grave. It's who we are more than what we believe. And this is true. Prayers of intercession or petition are ways of situating our life within total honesty and structural truth. And there's a story in the Bible, the parable of 2 sons. And Jesus asks, or not Jesus, but the father asks each son to do something. And the first son says, no, I don't want to. But then he goes and does it. And the second son says, of course I'll do it. And he doesn't. And which one makes the mistake? And they both make a mistake. The first son says, nope, I'm not. But he does it. The second one says, of course I will. So the father feels good about it. And then he doesn't do it. Right? So really you should say, yes, I'll do it. And then walk your talk is the message there. It's just an interesting message. The truth is what you do, not what you say. The first one said he wouldn't and he did. The second one said he would and he didn't. So the question is, what is your experience with prayers of petition? What are your expectations of the results? So I wrote, I have never had a prayer of petition actually answered. So I'm not one to generally pray that way. And I wrote about the things that I've prayed for, specific things: child abuse, addiction, job loss, Molly. I prayed very specifically for things to happen, knowing full well as I prayed that what was going to happen was going to happen. My prayers wouldn't make Molly wake up. I've never prayed to win a race. I've always prayed to be prepared to handle victory and defeat and the strength to accomplish both. It takes a lot of strength to get beat and manage it well and learn from it and all that. All of these questions for just one little sentence. Humbly give yourself over to God, right? Ask God to remove your shortcomings. All right. Step 7 says, we must humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. Don't you dare go after the faults you think you want him to remove. No, 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 no. You might pull the wrong thing out of the garden. What you think is wrong might just be covering up what really is. And you don't want to fix what's wrong. I don't really want to stop drinking, so I'll just say that I do. Or I'll point to the fact that I gamble. I'll fix that and I'll keep drinking. That's what an alcoholic might think. When you have changed something in your life only to discover that the change made things worse instead of better. Have you ever done that? How might you have avoided that mistake? Well, sometimes I feel like my whole life is a mistake. But I do know that right now, currently in my life, as I work these steps, I'm constantly changing my schedule to accommodate other people. And I realize now that the more I change my schedule, the less it works and the more things happen. And I used the example the other day of the day I spent the entire day with my mother. I had a full day to myself. And my mother had a meltdown and I spent the whole day with her. I worked very hard not to be upset about it because it was bigger than me. It wasn't about me. Everything I need to get done, I got done. That's a piece of it right there. The more I set a schedule, the less I seem to be able to follow the schedule, or the more it gets interrupted by things. Now, maybe I'm supposed to say no more so that my schedule integrity is maintained. I don't know. I do know today, on the day I'm recording this, August 4th, one of Kenny's sons continually invites him to play golf on Mondays. And Kenny says over and over again, Barb works on Mondays. I have Jack. And this child of his sends horribly mean texts and just vicious vitriol around Kenny's not being able to golf, blames it on me and Gracie and Jack and everything else. It's ugly. And every Sunday, Kenny will ask me. So I got invited to play golf tomorrow. So today I actually just said, you need to stop asking. I'm not changing my work day, especially not for this situation. Stop saying you'll check with me because you keep making it my fault. And he's going to continue to say terrible things about me and continue to use me as the triangulation between you and him. Now, maybe Kenny wants this. There's that piece of it, right? So I just stood my ground on this. Kenny, I'm not. Both times I rearranged my day. I had a horrible day and you and I fought. So suck it up and say no. That's all. He can't just say no. He's got to have a reason why he can't. And the reason has to be because of someone else. You can see I have a lot of emotion around this. Instead of rearranging my schedule, I stuck to it. I'm sorry, Kenny. No. Yes, there is a chunk of time you could go golf, but I have 50 things to do, and Monday is a work day. It's been a work day since Jack was born. I'm not willing to rearrange it ever again. So, I don't know. Maybe it's learning how to say no. So I wrote, I often change my schedule in an attempt to get more done. I double down on control. These efforts are always answered with a host of events that interrupt my schedule and remove my control. My substitutes are the superficial examples of the deeper issue. Yep. I always need to slow down. Probably that's my biggest impulse. I always need to slow down. Probably that's my biggest issue. I'm impulsive. Rather than try to control what I feel are the bad times, I need to lay it down and ask God to show me how to fix it, or ask God to take it off my hands. So I feel like I've been doing that a little bit better. We have to let God reveal our faults to us. And usually we do this by falling down again and again, right? And then we have to allow God to remove these faults. So we've already made a list of what we think our faults are. Now we give it over to God. All right, God, you show us what our faults are and take them away. And as I said before, it might not match our own list at all. When have you tried to eliminate a fault only to have it reappear later? How might you be more patient with yourself and your faults? So I wrote, I have been living with the angry stick for 3 years. I'm not sure on what I could use as an example. I'm not sure, of what I could use as an example of eliminating a fault. I think back to my lifetime of not following through, and I set out to follow through and then I don't. Perhaps I choose my follow through opportunities as surefire failures. I choose things I know I can't finish so I can fail. That could be. So many of my success stories rise from devastation. So maybe I create devastation so I can rise from the ashes once again. Do I seek more devastation, hoping to be the phoenix? It's interesting. I don't know. These are all things I think about. When I try to eliminate a fault, sometimes it just makes things worse. So maybe eliminating control is probably a good thing I could do, but maybe not. Maybe that would make things worse. Maybe I have to not try eliminating anything. Maybe I just have to pray for detachment. I give it over, Lord, take it, and just try to live my life with a grateful attitude. Lots of questions for this one sentence step. Life is a gift given to us without cost. We get it just because. So, in that vein, having an attitude of gratitude, what will it take to see everything as a gift and be grateful for your life? What are the differences between receiving and deserving? How would your life change if you were able to approach each day with open, humble hands? Well, anyone's life would be better if you could start each day with open, humble hands. I feel like my friend Molly, whose mother just died, would love the chance to have a crappy day with her mom, right? But she doesn't. Her mom's not here anymore. She doesn't get this day. Kenny says that again and again. I don't mind driving your mom around, Barb. I don't have a mom anymore. Receiving. So let's see. I received a full day with my mother. We drove around. We did some errands. We laughed. She rested. I got some work done. That was a wonderful gift. Deserving. If I think about what I deserve, well, I deserve a day to myself to get my stuff done. Really, the better day was the day I received. Now, this is not a reason to let somebody mistreat you. If you have an abusive partner or a friend that is making unreasonable expectations of you, that's not what this is. You can look into those things as how can I make these horrifying things a gift? But it's not an excuse to allow someone to continue to mistreat you. And this is a fine line for a lot of people. It can be a very tricky one to manage. I am sure for me, it isn't about accepting this attitude of gratitude into my life so much as lifting the veil from my face and acknowledging that I've had it in me all along. I am incredibly grateful for the most part. I just have many bumps in the road that I apparently let get in my way. All right. After a few years in recovery, you will know that your deep and insatiable desiring for all things good came from God or the universe all along, that you had it in you through a power greater than yourself all along. And the universe, or whatever that higher power is, or God, will wait. Not a big deal for the universal energy to wait for you to catch up, right? Write about something you have desired in the past or the present, and think about how it reflects in some way your deeper desire for God or the universe. I have desired peace in my heart. I have desired safety. I have desired that which I can never have, Molly, to come back. I desire financial security through my book. I desire a solvent Molly B Foundation. I desire a safe future for Jack and Gracie. I guess underneath it all, I want God to love me, which ultimately I know he does. So some of the things I want are very physical in nature: financial security for my children, financial security in a way that is meaningful. But then I also want peace. I just want to be happy, right? So the breathing lessons are not ones that I have had an easy time with. So let's see what they are. Prayers of petition are perhaps our most common prayers, from the desperate pleas of help to prayers of intercession for those we love or those who are in need. Write about times when you have prayed for someone or something. How was the prayer answered? So I have 2 or 3 things I'll write about. And when this whole 12-step season is over, I'll look at all the breathing lessons and do a final episode that summarizes everything I've gone through. It tells me to start to keep a gratitude journal. I have one, and on the cover it says, "Fine, I'm grateful." So I should write in it every day. I haven't. I just carry it around. I don't write in it. So I need to do this, and it tells me to, after I've done this for a few weeks, write about whether I notice a change in myself. How cute he thinks I'm going to write in it for a few weeks. God's totally positive and lasting way of removing our shortcomings is to fill up the hole with something much better, more luminous, and more satisfying. Then our old shortcomings are not driven away or pushed underground so much as they are exposed and starved as the false programs for happiness that they are. Like used scaffolding, our sins fall away from us as unneeded and unhelpful because now a new and better building has been found. So again, rather than focus on what's wrong, focus on what's okay and what's right. I remember when I used to work with kids, when I coached female runners, and a lot of runners have anorexia, bulimia, cutting, all sorts of those self-harming behaviors. And I would say to them again and again, so screw it. Don't count the number of times you puke. Puke all you want. Take worrying about puking your food off the table. Take worrying about cutting your skin off the table. Take worrying about pulling your hair out off the table. Do it all you want. Instead, focus on little things each day that will make you feel good about yourself. What's a book you like? Read 5 pages a day. What's your favorite candy? Eat a few bites. What's your favorite walk to go on? What's your favorite music to listen to? Do something that will make you happy. Just focus on that. Don't focus on all the crap that's wrong. And I feel like that's what this is saying. So I have to do the same thing, right? I have to stop worrying about the food I'm puking. I'm not puking food, but you know what I mean. Once I'm focusing on what's good, the bad will just starve to death, and it will make itself apparent that it's not worthy of feeding. But you have to feed something else first. Then it says, spend some time playing with a child's set of blocks or a deck of cards or a lump of clay. Build various structures, knock them down, and notice what makes a structure more or less solid and stable. As you move the pieces around, think about how they represent different aspects of your life, your relationships, your strengths and weaknesses. So I know this analogy right here, I know for me, a good foundation and a good internal structure. When you've got the studs and the boards up that you put the wall on, when you framed the house, I need my life framed. And that's where a punch card 9-to-5 job is good for me, because within that framework, I can be very efficient. I am not good at creating my own framework and then staying within it. I'm all over the place. It could be just some ADD. It could be a million things, but I do know that I struggle that way. So it's interesting. And I spend far too much time picking up Jack's toys. I don't want to play with them, but I will. We've got some blocks outside, so I'll build myself a structure, see what I think about it. So this was a long one for a 1-sentence step. Humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. And I learned, as I always do, I learned a lot from it. So I'm not sure if how many of you that listen get my email every week. I've been talking about it a lot, so I apologize if it's repetitive. But what I'm doing now, if you still don't have it, if you aren't signed up for it, what I'm doing now, and I'm going to show you if you're watching, each weekly email during this podcast season is about the step that I'm talking about in that week's podcast. So when I did the first episode in the beginning of July, my email was called Powerless and Unmanageable. And I spent the entire email talking about step 1, feeling powerless and having a life that's unmanageable. And I talk about things in my life that week that sort of played into and fed how well I did or didn't do on managing this step. I also talk about what's happening in my life at the time. So it's some real-time stuff. I ask some questions that I hope readers will answer. And I post my blog. This blog was, I'll have the end of June with a side of July, please. That was this blog. Each week, I do an email that announces the upcoming podcast, talks about the last blog I did, talks about what's going on in my life, and gives you links to get to the website where you can see both the podcast and the blog. So in terms of this 12-week season, I recommend you do the email, even if you just never open it again after this particular 12-week season. My emails are almost like another blog post, and I do a lot of processing there. And I realize, not that I'm ever wasting words, because I have 80 or so subscribers, but a lot more people could benefit from them than just the people that get the email. So in your do something good for yourself, sign up for my email. You can just go to the webpage, 1000tinysteps.com. And on the homepage at the very bottom is a place you can sign up to get the weekly emails. And I'm going to put them together and compile them and have them in one place, probably on my website, so that when this particular season is over, people can utilize them if they ever want to go through the steps again. So I'm done with episode 155. Yay! All right. So again, do something good for yourself. And once you've done that, do something good for someone else. And as always, have a good day, everybody.
Hey, thanks for listening and supporting the podcast. Feel free to leave a review and share my stories with your friends. Please reach out with your own stories, as I love connecting with my listeners. If you would like to get to know Molly, head over to mollybfoundation.org to see what she is all about. If you want to see what I'm up to next, you can find me on Instagram at barb_444, on Facebook as Barb Higgins, and at my website, 1000tinysteps.com. And while you're there, sign up for my newsletter, a weekly way to find out what's up in the life of Barb Higgins.